Talk some more about Israel and Palestine. So far, we're only been focused on Israel. The Palestinians had a square deal. Just recently, the United Nations condemned Israel for destroying buildings on the Palestinian side in East Jerusalem. They also killed a Palestinian, too. So these things happen. The flare-ups, they call them flare-ups. Well, I just did all this research, so I just want to kind of say the conclusion of my research. Someone that had told me that the Democrats are bad on Israel, right? So when it comes to the Democrats, you're supposed to assume that they're the opposition party. That's why people say, well, they're for open borders, and they're for the extreme opposite of whatever security is. Oh, you're not for border security, you must be for come on, come all. And when it comes to Israel and Palestine, right, Donald Trump just keeps on saying, we love Israel, we love Israel. The Democrats love Israel. There's a bipartisan consensus when it comes to imperialism. There's only a few Democrats that I actually, gave a crap about what they were saying when it came to Palestine because they were all so one-sided. So I'm going to first just talk about Joe Biden and talk about some of the other ones, and then I'm going to talk about Mike Gravel and Bernie Sanders. Those are the only two voices that we need to hear when it comes to the Palestinian-Israeli question. Okay, so Joe Biden, he's essentially just like the multitude of Democrats. Joe Biden's a Democrat, right? He voted for the Afghanistan, the Iraq wars. He thought that the overthrow of Libya was wonderful. No Americans died. It only cost America $2 billion. And, they got slavery there now, but let's, skip over that part. So he always loves all these wars, right? In 2002, Democrat Joe Biden said that if you take care of Iraq, you'll also take care of the Israel-Palestine question. I have no idea how, but he voted for the Iraq war, and so was that to protect Israel? Is that why we went into Iraq? So Israel, our love of Israel is getting us into all these foreign entanglements? Joe Biden himself, a Democrat, calls himself a Zionist. Joe Biden's for the two-state solution. They're all for the two-state solution, including Bernie Sanders, except for Mike Gravel. And Bernie Sanders' two-state solution, he's just so much more developed and articulate. He just blows everybody else out of the water when it comes to the two-state solution. And Mike Gravel is the only one that speaks sophisticated on the one-state solution. Joe Biden's going to sign the Palestinian Anti-Terrorism Act of 2006, and that was supposed to be considered a two-state solution bill. The Palestinian Anti-Terrorism Act of 2000. So that's two-state, that's a fair act, the Palestinian Anti-Terrorism Act. How about the Palestinian and Israeli Anti-Terrorism Act? That would put us on equal footing, but instead they're going to say, okay, Palestinians, you can't do terrorism. And then, that's the name of the whole... No, that's not a two-state solution bill, but it just shows you the bias, right? They're going to walk in this two-state solution and say, okay, Palestinians, you're the terrorist, right? Well, what about the 551 kids that, Israel just killed in 2014? What about the person they just killed yesterday? What about the buildings that they're destroying? What about the 60 people that they murdered just in March 2019, just a few months ago? So that's not terrorism. That's not, okay, we're just going to look right past. So Joe Biden acknowledges something obvious. He says the Arab nation knows the truth. He knows there's no daylight. The Arab nations, there's 2 billion Muslims, 50-something countries that have Muslim majorities. So there's a lot of Muslims in the world. And when the Muslims are looking at the situation between Israel and Palestine, they know what's going on, even if the American people don't know. They don't know. They don't pay attention to it, and, you just want to trust your leaders. So, they've been lying to us the whole time? Yeah, like they've been lying about marijuana, Iraq war. How many times do they have to lie to you before you start to realize that they're a bunch of lying, low-life pieces of dog shit? Huh? Joe Biden voted for the 1995 Jerusalem Embassy Act, which recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and it also said to locate the U.S. Embassy there. Well, hell, that's what Donald Trump did. So Joe Biden and Donald Trump are the exact same when it comes to the Jerusalem Embassy Act and Jerusalem being the capital of Israel. So the U.S. Embassy would have been in Jerusalem, and the capital of Israel would have been Jerusalem had Joe Biden been president. They would have been no different. In 2019, earlier this year, the U.S. government cut all foreign aid, $60 million to the Palestinians. They cut it all. We're sending $4 billion to the Israelis, but we throw $60 million to the Palestinians. We, throw the dog a bone. But the Palestinians were actually okay with this. So just when it comes to, the embassies and the Golan Heights and the capital of Israel, essentially with the 1995 Jerusalem Embassy Act, how Donald Trump could have just read that and said, well, Joe Biden was for it, let's go ahead and do it. Joe Biden he's not a progressive. He always cuts and runs, and he runs to the right. He runs to the neoliberals. So because of the 95 Jerusalem Embassy Act, he would have done the same thing as Donald. And so when it comes to the Golan Heights, when it comes to the cutting the funding of the Palestinians, I don't know if Joe Biden would have been any different when Joe Biden says that Democrats love Israel. The love of Democrats for Israel comes from our gut, and it moves through our heart, and it ends up in our head. Okay, it's almost genetic. What a weirdo. Oh, I love you from the gut to the heart to the brain, because that's how love travels. In 2007, Joe Biden blamed the Palestinians for there being no peace, because for Joe, it's the Palestinians who don't play fair. It's the Palestinians who don't want to negotiate. That's 2007. Hell, the Iraq War had been going strong for 4 years. Iraq was supposed to take care of the whole Palestine-Israel question, according to Joe Biden. But it didn't, okay? So we've been in the Iraq War, and it didn't take care of it. Now, Joe Biden has criticized the expanding settlements into Judea and Samaria. There's over 500,000 illegal Israeli settlements in Palestine. Joe Biden pointed out that since Israel is expanding settlements and legalizing outposts, they're moving us towards a one-state reality, and that reality is dangerous. So he's acknowledging something that several of the other Democrats have acknowledged, that the more land that you take from Palestine, the less likely a two-state solution will happen. And if Palestine takes over Israel, Israel takes over Palestine, that's World War III. So all you got left is a one secular nation. So there is no theocracy, there is no Hamas, there is no Netanyahu. What you have is an America. Which they have freedom of religion, and they have an establishment clause, so there is no government-sanctioned religion. There's a wall between religion and the state in America, so they got to be neutral. You have the right to, be whatever religion you want to in America. You have a right to express your religion however you wish, but the government cannot establish a religion, so they cannot choose one religion over another. And so the Supreme Court's actually been very good about this, because they don't want the government to endorse one religion over another. And, there's ways around it if you have a secular purpose. So if you're saying we're studying religion, then that's, So the Israel-Palestine situation can be solved by turning Israel into a country like America, and that might lose their Jewish theocracy, but the Jewish nature of Israel will never go away. And if Israel does that, that's they're leading by example. They're doing better. A lot of, ISIS thinks that the Islamic State, the Islam and the state should be combined. That's a theocracy. So by saying theocracies are acceptable and fine, and we're not having toleration, we don't have the freedom to religion, and we don't have the establishment clause, well, then you're just setting up a situation that says, the whole country is going to be all one religion. And religion is so stupid. It's so dumb. So a lot of these candidates, I want to say Beto O'Rourke and Julian Castro, they realize that if Israel continues to take Palestine, then Israel's forcing the nation for them to become one nation, and the one nation is not going to be Jewish, or it's not going to be Muslim. So either Israel wants a democratic state with equal rights for everybody, or they want a Jewish state. So which one is it going to be? Do they want to maintain the Jewish state, or do they want a democratic state, a secular binational state that respects that believes in religious toleration, respects the religious freedom, but there's, a wall between the state and religion. So those are the only two things that we could do. So Joe Biden, like all these other Democrats, they just love Israel. They fall over themselves with their love and support of Israel, but they can't even see Palestine. They can't even see Palestine. Tim Ryan points out that the U.S. government isn't really trying to resolve the crisis, and he wants an honest, neutral broker to solve the Israel-Palestine conflict, which makes him off the political spectrum. Oh my God, Tim Ryan wants an honest, neutral broker? You're just supposed to love Israel. You're not supposed to acknowledge the Palestinians as being human beings. You know, you're not supposed to acknowledge Palestine as being a state or any kind of nation state that's worthy of recognition. So all the Democrats are for Iran, the Iran nuclear deal. Cory Booker said he was for it at the time, and now he wants to change it, rewrite a brand new one. But essentially, they thought it was a mistake for Donald to even pull out the Iran nuclear deal. So that's of interest to Israel, that they all agree with the Iran nuclear deal. But when it comes to Israel-Palestine, they just stay away from, you know, Palestine. You know, some of them say, you know, a little bit. Pete Buttigieg, he said that Netanyahu's attempt to annex the West Bank is ridiculous. So, you know, I found one criticism there. And then Marianne Williamson, she says that the illegal Israeli settlements in Palestine are illegal. She would also rescind Donald's executive order giving the Golan Heights to Israel. She says, as President of the United States, I would have an equally robust commitment to both the legitimate security concerns of Israel and the human rights of the Palestinians and the economic hopes and opportunities and dignity of the Palestinian people. So, you know, you get little Joe Seastack once criticized Israel's blockade of Gaza. He got, you know, crapped on for that, but Joe Seastack, he once criticized Israel. Seth Moulton signed some legislation saying that we will not give Israel weapons and goods if they do not uphold standards for the treatment of the Palestinian kids in prison. And he also points out that over 700 Palestinian children are put in jail. So this is Seth Moulton. Who is Seth Moulton? Who knows? But Seth Moulton, you know, he's passed legislation that says, Israel, you need to behave. Eric Swalwell, he didn't make it onto the second debate stage. He did say that he wanted to increase the aid to the Palestinian people, fire Jared Kushner. Mike Gravel, he was the only one for the one-state solution, but he's not going to be on the debate stage. Cory Booker said something about the Palestinians have a right to dignity and self-determination. Beto O'Rourke did protest against the 2014 Gaza massacre. He didn't want to give them more money. So, you know, like I said, every one of them, these are the general Democrats. So, in general, all the Democrats love Israel, and they only kind of talk about Palestine in passing. So let's talk about how much they love, you know, Palestine. You have, let's see, they love Palestine. So when it comes to AIPAC is, they adore Amy Klobuchar. That's a Democrat. Amy Klobuchar is a Democrat. She voted for the anti-BDS movement bill. So did Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard recently signed on to the anti-BDS movement bill. The New York Times is trying to make it out to be an anti-Semitic thing. It really seems, I mean, there is a guy that's organizing it, and they keep pointing to a quote that says something about destabilizing Israel, and then he personally believes that if Israel wants to try to develop in Palestine, then they're going to have, if modern-day Israel wants to do the thing, they're going to have a lot of trouble. So it's, you know, I don't know, it's using some interesting rhetoric. The guy who come up with this thing. Apparently there's one guy, and but he's very nuanced, so take a look at his words. So BDS just means boycott, divest, and sanction. So this is a global solidarity movement which just says, Israel, you need to start acting right. Until you do, we're going to boycott you, we're going to divest, we're going to take money away from you, and we're going to sanction you. And people are like, well, that's just economic terrorism. That's just, no, it's, you know, freedom. And if we don't like what you're doing, we get to, you know, use the power of the purse, put money where our mouth is. If we don't like what you're doing, we're not going to give you our money. We're not going to supply, you know, that which we don't agree with. In fact, we should boycott, divest, and sanction everything we disagree with. So the whole BDS movement bill, this is just such bullshit. This isn't necessary. It's not needed. It's just AIPAC is pushing it. So it's just, again, to show that America is only one-sided. The Muslim world knows what's going on, even if the American people don't. They know that the U.S. government and Israel are butt buddies, and they'll protect each other no matter what. And most of the time, Israel does whatever the fuck they, you know, whatever they please, and we have little to no influence over them at all. Michael Bennet, he's a Democrat, a senator from Colorado. He thinks that Israel is the one indispensable nation on the planet. Marianne Williamson is the opposite of Michael Bennet. She thinks that the U.S. is the #1 indispensable nation on the planet, and that Israel is #2. So these are Democrats. You're going to tell me that the Democrats, they hate Israel and they don't give a shit about Palestine? The Democrats have no, backbone and moral courage, so they act like Republicans and pretend that they love Israel the most, and then, Palestine gets put on the back burner. The two-state solution requires the leadership of America to recognize the Palestinian people as humans and the Israeli people as humans. Both sides. If we're going to get a two-state solution, you got to respect both sides. So Michael Bennett, he thinks Israel is the one indispensable nation on the planet, even over America, right? Even over Bolivia and Argentina, even over Argentina. I mean, I don't know why Argentina. What did Argentina ever do to Michael Bennett? They're not indispensable. Who gives it? Fuck Argentina. So Michael Bennett, these are the Democrats, right? After the 551 kids were murdered by Israel in the 2014 Gaza massacre, you had Kirsten Gillibrand. She pushed to give Israel an additional $662 million in addition to the $4 billion a year that Israel already gets from the U.S. taxpayer. So because they're massacring the kids, thousands of Palestinians, 551 kids, Kirsten Gillibrand says, let's give Israel even more weapons of war, $662 million worth. Now, just, Palestine, we just cut Palestine off of the funds. That's $60 million. So we're giving Palestine $60 million, acting like we're on both sides and we're equal. We give one nation $4 billion. We get another $60 million. That's a lot to me, $60 million. But here you got Kirsten Gillibrand pushing $662 million. That's 10 times the yearly amount that Palestine gives, and she wants to give them that much money. So what's the incentive? Israel kills a bunch of kids. Kirsten Gillibrand's going to give them even more money and weapons and nuclear bombs and tanks and whatever the hell they wanted to. Elizabeth Warren does the same shit. She voted to give Israel $225 million extra during the 2014 Gaza massacre so that Israel would have even more weapons for Israel's terrorism against the Palestinians. When a voter had confronted Elizabeth Warren about this in 2014, why do you support apartheid in Palestine? Elizabeth Warren just freaked the fuck out. She was like, Israel is justified in launching offensive rockets into Gaza. Elizabeth Warren is, all defensive about how she supported 200. So she's changed her tune a little bit because she's running for president. But again, just like Kirsten Gillibrand, Elizabeth Warren, $225 million, that's a shit ton of fucking money. And to give them an incentive to keep on killing more Palestinians and their babies. Thousands of Palestinians, hundreds of babies. Elizabeth Warren, Kirsten Gillibrand's pushing more money on top of them in 2014. Joe Biden, Democrat again, he says, send a message to Bibi during the 2014 Gaza massacre, or just after it. He said, send a message to Bibi. It starts good, right? Send a message to your president. Send a message to Bibi. I love him. I love him. Oh, that, message, went straight into the gutter. He would have paid attention if he said, hey, Bibi, I'm going to cut $4 billion from you if you don't, act right. No, we'll do whatever the hell we want to do then. Okay. We also won't cover your asses in the Security Council veto, and then we'll lead a United Nations coalition and occupy both Palestine and Israel and force these two assholes, these two kids, they can't get along, and force them to behave. And that's just America do what America does best, right? We got this military-industrial complex. Let's occupy Palestine and Israel through the United Nations. The United Nations have been begging to do it for years. Our veto allows Israel to get away with this shit. So, okay, we'll see how far Israel gets without us, if that's what the game they want to play. How about just treat people the way they're supposed to be treated, the golden rule? Isn't that in the Torah, thou shalt not kill? I mean, I'm pretty sure that's somewhere. But even if your religion says it's okay for you to murder, I don't give a damn. Fuck you. Thou shalt not murder because, that's the worst crime out here. So, yeah, fantastic. 2019, Elizabeth Warren co-sponsored legislation to give Israel $38 billion over the span of 10 years. During the March 2019 Gaza massacre, John Hickenlooper said his heart was with Israel. Look at all these Democrats. The Democrats don't love Israel? Are you kidding me? The Times of Israel called Democrat Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar in 2019 the candidate who is most closely aligned with AIPAC. Oh, okay. So the one candidate is a Democrat, mostly aligned with AIPAC, Amy Klobuchar. That's a Democrat. She says Israel's the great protector of human rights. And she thinks when she's president, if she's really, really nice to Netanyahu, then hopefully Netanyahu will rescind his current illegal settlement policy. Pete Buttigieg is endorsed by former AIPAC president Steve Grossman. Kirsten Gillibrand claims that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. She forgets about the democracies that the U.S. has installed in Palestine and Iraq. They have elections in Palestine. They have elections in Iraq. So that's all we're saying about Israel, because they're intimidating the Arabs from coming to the polls. Well, that's not democracy. But if you're just saying they have elections, well, okay, Israel's got elections. They don't let the Arabs go to the polls, so they intimidate them, make sure they don't go vote. So that's, the democracy in Palestine and Iraq, I'm sure, is up to those standards. You get to exclude some people, right? That's what Israel's doing. They're setting the example. It's not democracy, it's racism. So Netanyahu doesn't want to offer the right to vote to the Arab people. He's angling to take over the West Bank. He wants to take over Palestine. So this is just a Mississippi plan where the white supremacists during Reconstruction learned that violence and intimidation changes the outcomes of elections. So, yeah, it turns out when you're violent and you intimidate folks to not go vote, they don't vote. So that's why it's important to say, you know what, I don't give a shit who's trying to intimidate me. I'm going to go vote. Democrat Cory Booker declared, if I forget thee, O Israel, may I cut off my right hand. God damn, Cory Booker. I mean, that's some extreme rhetoric. If I forget thee, O Israel, may I cut off my right hand. Is he going to cut off his left hand if he forgets Palestine? So what a psycho, right? I mean, my God, I wouldn't go to Brazil. Hey, Brazil, if I forget you, may I chop off my pinky toe. Brazil, why would you forget Brazil? That's such a weird thing to say. It almost feels like if you're saying stuff like that, it's kind of like, why do you need to say that? Cory Booker supports the Taylor Force Act. He was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford. He hung out at the university's Jewish house. He became friends with a right-wing Orthodox rabbi named Shmuley Boteach. Cory Booker enjoys quoting Hillel, a Jewish sage. This is the Democrats. The Democrats love Palestine and they don't give a damn about Israel. My God, Cory Booker's going to chop off his right hand when it comes to Israel. And that's not even the favorite of AIPAC. 54-year-old Democrat California Senator Kamala Harris, she thinks that Israel upholds human rights perfectly. They say, hey, do you think that Israel respects human rights? She said, yes. Yes. They hold them up perfectly, beautifully. Yeah, they should be a model for human rights all around the world. Yeah, Israel's doing such a great job, Kamala Harris. Beto O'Rourke said that the U.S.-Israeli relationship is one of the most important on the planet. And he also, Beto O'Rourke, thinks that BDS and the United Nations are too concerned with the issues of Israel and Palestine. Really? Well, they still have problems. Maybe we should have more attention on it. Beto O'Rourke was in solidarity with Israel 100% of the time, except for one time during his 8-year stint in Congress. Wayne Messam even empathizes with the Israelis' fear of the Palestinians. He says that Israel is only treating the Palestinians, permanently occupying them, and installing a blockade, military checkpoints, military wall, and all those outposts because they're just so scared. They're so scared that they think that they have to do all these things. So that's taking empathy to a whole nother level, empathy of the oppressed. Seems to, I don't know if he cares about the Palestinians, but he definitely empathizes with the oppressors. When they asked him about Donald taking the Golan Heights of Syria, the Democrat, Wayne Messam, he downplayed it, said, well, it was just an executive order by POTUS. And then he says, well, at the end of the day, Wayne Messam, a Democrat, the question becomes, that is, at the end of the day, that it's important for America to maintain our strong alliance with Israel so we can achieve peace in the region. Okay, fantastic. Why did you have to throw that part in? We're talking about, do you think the Golan Heights of Syria is fair? So he's acting like, oh, it's just an executive order, it's not international law, but they did it. So whether it was part of international law or not, who's going to stop them? So he acts like, oh, I don't know. So, okay, Wayne Messam, he's a Democrat. You have Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard just voted for that BDS bill. The more I look into Tulsi Gabbard, I used to think she was, the best on war and peace, but I've just, given her too many passes when it comes to torture, when it comes to drones, when it comes to extreme vetting. There's just so many things that she just keeps brushing up against, and it's kind of like, I'm tired of defending you. So she's going to sit there and say that the BDS movement, she condemns it. She was there for the Netanyahu speech. She says the Israel-American partnership is very important. Enduring alliance. She only admits there's some challenges that Israel needs to address. Only some. She didn't support the one United Nations resolution that the Obama administration successfully got. She did write afterwards that she shared the Obama administration's reservation about the harmful impact Israeli settlement activity has on the prospects for peace. But there was a United Nations proposal, resolution. She didn't jump on board. She's signing this BDS thing, champion Netanyahu. Well, when it comes to Bernie Sanders and Mike Gravel, I guess I get to Bernie Sanders and Mike Gravel, but I'm kind of, kicking ass to taking names. I feel like I'm crushing it right now. So Bernie Sanders and Mike Gravel, the only two people that have anything to say whatsoever when it comes to Israel and Palestine. So for the most part, when it comes to the Democrats, when it comes to, just Elizabeth Warren, Tulsi Gabbard, Seth Moulton, he was, had the one thing, Jay Inslee, Eric Swalwell, Amy Klobuchar, Beto O'Rourke, Joe Seastack, John Hickenlooper. All these folks are for the two-state solution, right? And so is Bernie Sanders. Now, Bernie Sanders is the most articulate when it comes to the two-state solution. He wants an end to the blockade of Gaza. He wants to resolve the border dispute of the West Bank. He wants to end the policy of targeted killings. He wants to prevent future Israeli settlements into the Palestinian country and to stop the destruction of Palestinian homes, businesses, and infrastructure. That's for Israel. Israel needs to blockade, end the blockade, stop doing the killing, stop doing the settlements, stop destroying the homes, resolve the border dispute. For Bernie Sanders, he wants the very specific, the two-state solution based on the 1967 lines with Jerusalem as the capital of both states. He says this is based on international law, the multiple United Nations Security Council resolutions, international consensus. Everybody agrees on this. And so you just got to enforce it. That's all Bernie Sanders is saying. We got a two-state solution here. We got to enforce it. He does demand of the Palestinians to stop their violence and to recognize Israel's right to exist. Bernie Sanders is for a two-state solution just like the rest of them, right? Just like Joe Biden and Amy Klobuchar, Elizabeth Warren, Tulsi Gabbard. They're all for a two-state solution. Now, are they serious about it? Are they being serious? They'll say two-state solution to let Israel do as the hell they please and not enforce shit. But because Bernie Sanders is at least criticizing the murder, the terrorism of Israel, then that gives me greater reassurance that he'll actually do something about it when he's the president. Julian Castro says it's either a Jewish state or a Democratic state. You got one or the other. Do you want to be the Jewish state or do you want to be a Democratic state? The more land you take from Palestine, the less of a chance of a two-state solution will happen. So therefore, it's going to be a democracy. Everybody joins in. It's not a Jewish country. It's not a Muslim or a Christian country. It's a no-religion country. And just like America, right? You got the freedom of religion, and you also have the Establishment Clause that the government must remain neutral when it comes to religious matters. Mike Gravel is for the one-state solution. He also wants to protect the BDS movement. This is incredible. He wants to protect the BDS movement. They just called him the movement anti-Semitic. And so, if they're able to get that propaganda pushed out there, then anybody who says that Israel's doing wrong, well, clearly they just doesn't, they don't like the Jews. That's absolute bullshit, and I'm so sick of that argument. So, I don't give a shit about religion, okay? So, there is that, but I've also noticed in all groups of people, you got good and bad people. So if the Jewish people, they listen to Torah, if they listen to the Torah, thou shalt not kill. So if they're being good Jewish people, then they wouldn't be doing the things, they wouldn't kill 551 Palestinian kids. Mike Gravel wants to protect the BDS movement. He wants to end apartheid in Israel and Palestine. He wants to end the $4 billion in yearly subsidies. He wants to restrict the power of AIPAC by having them register under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA. He wants to attempt a two-state solution by establishing mature nonpartisan relationships with Israel and its neighbors. But if the two-state solution cannot be done because they've already taken 500,000 illegal Israeli settlements in Palestine, Netanyahu's planning on annexing Area C. So he's planning on taking over the West Bank. He plans on taking over more. So for Mike Gravel, the two-state solution has passed. We've been pushing for the two-state solution for decades, and Israel just won't do it, even with our $4 billion and the nukes and the tanks and the Security Council veto. Israel just goes ahead and just takes and takes and takes. So the two-state solution for Mike Gravel has failed, so therefore we need one democratic state that is binational. They have a freedom of religion. There's an establishment clause. There is no theocracy, no Muslim nation, no Muslim state, no Jewish state, but a state for everybody. And that's really